Sponsored by the Dunleary Rattown Local Enterprise Office. You're listening to Business Eye on Dublin South FM.
Summertime. The longest day has passed us and we are slipping into the shorter evenings. God, that sounds very sad. But yes, look, we are still in summer. People have been telling me that they're outside nibbling on food and having pints outside. And then we see that the government want to close indoors. No fun indoors, everybody outdoors. So I was having a laugh with someone this morning that they were telling me it's now not the Delta, but the Delta Plus. And they laughed their heads off saying, what the hell is going on with these people? And that's being very polite that are ruling us. But, you know, summertime, holidays. Simon is with me once again. Myself and Simon went for a lovely walk in Glendalough there during the day. We had a business meeting. What a best way to do a business meeting. Wasn't it, Simon? What do you think?
It was great. And you said ruling. Did you mean ruining?
Oh, slip of words. That's it, yes.
And talking of ruins, we had a lovely walk around Glendalough, and it was just, I finished a training session 10 o'clock that day, and I said to them, that's it, 5 hours, I'm driving to Wicklow, I'm just downing tools. And you just need to do that. You just need to take time out and just walk in nature. That's the first time I've left Dublin since 2020. That's mad, isn't it, Joe?
Prison sentence. Do you know what I've noticed as well, and I'm actually enjoying? Instead of doing all the Zoom calls with people, I'm actually now enjoying talking to people face to face. I swear to God, it's a weird experience, but I'm enjoying it.
How does that feel?
It's weird. Really weird. And also picking up the phone and actually dialing people and talking to them over the phone as well. So it's a strange cycle, that the pros and cons of everything in life. But, at the end of the day, I think it's how we find ourselves within and what's happening with ourselves inside as well. And if we can really sort of connect with that power within inside, everything outside is what it is. And we just get on with it. Yeah. So
absolutely.
Who we got today?
Well, we've got two great guests, both of whom have a good awareness of what it takes to tap into the strength inside. And we're going to talk a little bit about resilience and relationships and everything to do with just being aware of who you are and your place in the world. So first up, we have Ewan Dunbar, somebody we've spoken to on the podcast. Ewan, it's great to see you. And Ewan is founder and principal consultant and coach at Exponential Limited. He's had an amazing career, including group finance director at Virgin Media Ireland. He's worked with the big consulting firms. I'll leave Ewan, if he wishes to talk a little bit about a journey he's been on around health and recovery. But it's great to see you, Ewan.
Hi, Simon. Thanks for having me in today. Thank you.
Great to see you again. And then Andy Gillies, who I know very well. Just a disclaimer to the audience, we're related. And so we know each other very well. Andy has an equally, I think, really inspiring journey, which is up to him how much he wants to share. And went through a journey, became a professional actor in the UK, and is now using his skill sets around reading people and connecting with people and being genuine and sincere and building relationships in the sales environment. So it'd be great to talk about, the power of connection rather than just communication from a sales perspective. So this is going to be a fun chat, Joe.
We are all connected. That's when we figure that one out, that we are all connected. Life is quite strange. So yes, it is, it's about resilience and about relationships as well. And sometimes I think we forget about relationships. We can get very centered on me, myself, and I, and especially when we're working within an organization. And sometimes we have to take a step back and listen to other people's and our stakeholders as well. So, guys, I'll open up to you. Listening, have we forgotten the art of listening? Andy, start with yourself.
I think we have. I think that's a very good point. I think if I go back to when I was a wee boy, my mum always said to me, there's a reason we've got two ears and one mouth. And I've tried to take that philosophy with me throughout my life because I think it's very important. If you don't listen, you can't have a relationship with anyone because ultimately listening's the main part of a relationship. Talking it actually is a very small part. I mean, we know that naturally because if you think about body language, I think it's now about 70% of people pick up on body language. It's actually a very small part of what people pick up from the spoken word. So I think listening and being open to listening, more importantly, it isn't just important; it's essential.
I agree, and it's funny. Listen and silent have the same letters in them, and I think we communicate via listening and then processing, and that helps the connection. So no, I agree with that. And what do you think about the whole of listening? There's listening, but there's truly hearing, isn't there?
Yeah, I'm new to listening, if I'm honest. Just in the last few years since I've undertaken coaching, it's really made me aware of how to listen properly. And when I self-reflect, previously I probably wasn't a good listener, to be honest. Particularly, in leadership roles, I listen to a fair amount. There's listening and there's really active listening, looking at people's facial expressions. Do they look uncomfortable? Do they look comfortable? What are they really saying? And importantly, a key tool that complements listening is asking the right questions to delve down and get to the truth of the matter. I think it's really important. And I do a lot of leadership coachings, and that's one of the biggest aspects, advice that I give when it comes to communication. It's not so much communication outward, it's communication inwards and how you respond to that. That's important.
Yeah, it's eyes to see and ears to hear and belief systems to change. Especially when we are talking about communication, and you both make two very valid points. But has the listening process, and you talk about the body language and everything as well, changed over the last year? Because we've been doing Zoom. Are you looking at me on this Zoom call, or are you looking at yourself on this Zoom call? And how do we interact with each other in a digital world?
Andy, what do you think? How has the last year and a half changed the way we interact, or has it changed?
Of course it's changed. Of course it's changed us. I work for a company that actually works in that space, a telecommunications company. So for us, it's completely almost brought the world to us and what we do. I think what's changed the most is how we converse now. I think we converse completely differently over video. And I think a really, really interesting point that you just made there, Joe, is do we look at ourselves on these calls, or do we look at the people that we're speaking to? And I bet you if you ask that question to, I'd say it would be a very high percentage, if they were being honest with themselves, that say they look at themselves more on these calls than they do the people they're speaking to. So I think it has. I think what it's given me, for instance, to give you an example, is I now look a lot more at my face when I'm listening to people. So I've started to look at what my facial reactions are when people are talking to me more. I never would have done that before.
Yeah, I just said, but I was on mute. Joe spends all his time looking at himself, but that's another thing.
But we all do to a degree. I think even
pruning, Simon.
Yeah, I think we all do that. And you could argue there's nothing wrong in someone having someone wanting to look correctly for how they want to look correctly. Of course, that can go to a bad level because ultimately it's about what's inside that gives you strength. And
that's a good point. So what about how, maybe start with you, Ewan, what do you do differently in terms of looking at yourself, looking into your soul? And then we'll talk to Andy about that. To what extent do you look into your soul and question yourself, Ewan?
I mean, I guess firstly, just picking up on Andy's point there in terms of looking at yourself. I think in Zoom calls, we're looking at ourselves, and then out in the real world when you're transacting with people, if you like, you're looking at someone that can't really give you a facial expression, which makes it very, very difficult. It has given me an awareness of how much a facial expression means to me. That nice smile, letting me know, comforting, letting me know that what I'm saying is resonating, or that sort of grimace that, maybe my joke's not been taken too well, shock. So it's difficult, and certainly it's something I think, in 2022, we'll look forward to losing the face masks. Obviously, that means losing part of a wardrobe in this day and age, but I think we'll all very much welcome that. In terms of my, looking deep within inside, I think it is that personal self-awareness that's really key. The reflection, and I think, to really master that, I think you really need to take time out, and that's what, again, one of my biggest message to leaders these days is a case of putting your own oxygen mask on first before you worry about others, and it's about, even going for a walk in the wilderness without technology, and just contemplating what's important to you and reflecting. And I think when you do that, I think, you really unpick quite a lot of issues. Meditation and, the likes of sea swimming, etc. They're all sort of fads, if you like, but there's a reason for them. That there is sort of benefits of getting away from the city and just having that peace and relaxation, I think.
That's good. Andy, what do you do? I know Joe's champing at the bit here. What do you do to self-reflect, to slow down, to think about what you're doing? What do you do?
I think for me personally, there was two parts to my life. We referenced, or you referenced, Simon, earlier on about when I was ill. I think prior to that illness, I didn't reflect on myself at all. I think it took something of a magnitude that affected my life in such a way, and the people around me as well, that I had to look in. I was confined to a bed for nearly 2 years. I could hardly walk. So I think when you're in that space, you're forced to look inside yourself. Yeah. So I think since then, I think this is going to sound so boring and obvious. The simple things. Just focus on the simple things. Just focus on the things in life that give you something that make you feel grounded, that give you a level of honesty. For me, that has always been my family, as boring as that may be, my beautiful boy. When you look at that innocence, it gives you clarity. And yeah, so that's why I'd say. And I think when you look within, you have to ask the hard questions. Yeah, you have to be prepared to go deep and ask yourself the hard questions. And I think if you can do that process, and I think meditation it can release that side of things. I think when you ask those questions, I think you can come out with some really strong answers.
Perfect.
There's a great way of finding out about who people are. And if I was to ask both of you this question, you have 12 hours to live. The world is ending in 12 hours. How would you spend the next 11 hours? And by defining those 11 hours will define the person that you are. And for me, when I was asked that question, it was I'd spend time with my family, with my kids, laughter and hugs and jokes. Other people have said they go down to Boozer and get tanked up and, stick a line of coke up their nose and party into the never after. But I think that's a good question to sort of, if you really want to find that inner journey, and it is, you're saying keep it simple. It is. If you do that, you realize, what would it be for yourselves, Ewan?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I'm the same as yourself. It's really spending that time with loved ones and, kids and family and try and have a bit of fun and, implant a really happy memory in their lives. I probably, because I have been faced with this. In fact, this I was reflecting this morning with my wife that it was 2 years ago to the day that I was diagnosed with cancer, and at this point in time, it was actually sort of a week ago to the day 2 years ago that I was diagnosed. But at this point in time, I didn't know whether it was terminal or not. So I was doing a lot of reflection in terms of, okay, what's my next steps? How am I going to make this time count? And one of the things I planned to do was to leave lots of videos, messages, so that you could be there, key times for the kids when they're growing up, to try and give them that advice that you wouldn't necessarily be about to give them. That would be sort of my parting gift. Now, as per normal, they might not take my advice, but it'd certainly be something that I'd like to share. So I again, with like you, Joe, I think family would be first and foremost of that thought process. Sorry, just as an anecdote, I have discussed this with Simon. I love there's a great survey that was done, you're probably aware of, the 5 regrets of the terminally ill people undertaking palliative care. And I really do think you can learn a lot by looking at that survey. If you'd like, actually, I'll just quickly read them out. I have them in front of me. Number 1, I'd wish I'd had the courage to live life true to myself, not what others expected of me. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Apologies to all employers out there listening to that one. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Number 4, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. And number 5, I wish that I'd let myself be happier.
That's cool. Andy, what would you build on that? Anything that you'd add to that? Because just before you do, there's a survey in India, and they asked some terminally ill, wealthy Indians a similar questionnaire, and the thing that came top was, I wish I'd asked for help more in life. What do you think about this whole area? If there's any advice could you give to your younger version of yourself, what would you tell yourself to do more of?
I think there's too many. I don't think we've got enough time to cover that, Simon. I think I would tell myself to be more confident. I think the biggest thing that I would tell myself actually is focus on the things that you can change and not worry about the things that you can't. I think we focus far too much of our time and energy on stuff we have no control over.
Yep.
And I think it eats away at us. So I would definitely just say to myself, just focus on what you can actually change. And going back to the question you said, Joe, I think that's a really good question, and I think we would all jump to family. I mean, in the main, I think everyone would want to spend time with their family, and I think that's the right thing to do.
My younger self would have said something different, but
yeah, I think so. I think maybe you're right. My younger self would have probably just gone down to the pub and forgotten about it all. But for me, I would want a level of normality my normality within that 12 hours. We all know what it's like when you have something impending coming up in the future. You can't get it out of your mind anyway. It shadows everything you do. For, I don't know, say for me, when I was an actor, if I had the first night of a show, I couldn't think about anything else for the 24 hours before that. It was so scary, that moment of getting on stage. So I always try to do normal stuff. I always try to just, and this is going to sound, look at the sun, look at nature, look at the things that can give you peace. So those are the things that I would sort of do. I think are very important.
So building on all of this, you both, and you haven't disclosed too much, and but you've both been through a journey, and you both clearly demonstrated resilience, because you're both still here, as I am, as Joe has. We've all gone through a journey and we've come through. And when you were both in, the toughest times, can you remember hearing voices in your head spurring you on, or what was it? If you were to go back, Andy, you mentioned those couple of years, and you and I know what you went through a couple of years ago, and I've been through stuff. What was it in those tough times, do you think, if you could bottle it and give it to people who are just entering tough times? What do you think it was that kept you going? Maybe Ewan. It's not an easy question to answer, but just an essence of what you think it might have been.
Yeah, for me, I'm very privileged. I consider myself very privileged that I have a really good support network in terms of friends, family, colleagues, and wider community. I've invested a lot in that network over the years. My wife always jokes I collect friends, but I've always made an effort, and I did find that came back to be a real positive when I needed it. My support network always described me as being immensely positive, and they all say, "Oh yeah, we knew that you'd kicked cancer to touch, and you'd really go at it, and you'd be really positive about it, etc., etc." But I guess the reason my energy came from them, it wasn't the other way about. I almost felt like I was zapping their energy or taking their energy. They were giving it to me, and I was taking it, and that was a really big thing for me. I guess the other thing is perspective. I think that's probably one of the most important things in life. If you can put perspective in situations, then suddenly what is a big issue for you is fairly minor in the scheme of things. And for me, I was fortunate that I was given the diagnosis that it wasn't likely to be terminal in the end, that it was curable. Fairly high probability that after a year or two of various operations and treatments, etc., they get me back to almost normal. Whereas at the time, I knew other people who were going through a different journey and weren't so fortunate with the outcome, and ultimately passed away from cancer. So, from my perspective, how could I feel sorry for myself at any point in time when I knew that they'd give anything to be in my situation? So yeah, you have down days, and you have to allow yourself to have down days. But most of the time, it's about picking yourself back up and thinking, I'm just lucky to be alive. I'm lucky to have such good friends, family, contacts, and it's really about being grateful for that. I guess that gives you a real positive.
Sorry, go on, Andy. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, for me, everything you said there would resonate with me. I think perspective is key. So I have rheumatoid arthritis, and I never mentioned that, and it never got diagnosed for a while. So that's why I was confined to a bed for so long, and I couldn't walk. And I always remember I had to get both my hips replaced because of that. And I remember laying in hospital on the first one, and probably at my lowest point, actually. And there was a 11-year-old kid in the bed opposite me with a bone disease who never did see the outside of that hospital, and unfortunately isn't with us anymore. That's perspective. You're completely right. When you see an 11-year-old, even now it affects me. Even now thinking about that child in that bed, when you think about that, it gives you reason to just give yourself a little bit of a kick. And also stubbornness. I was stubborn. I did, and everyone told me that that's a bad quality of mine, and still to this day say it. But I was stubborn. I wasn't going to let it beat me. I was going to do everything within my power to get better.
Yeah.
And so I think that stubbornness can be a big factor in getting over illness.
Yeah.
We all can be stubborn, but with both of you.
What about yourselves, Joe? Simon, I'd be interested in your perspective on that.
I'll go first quickly. I really, perspective is one that I'd be like Andy because we're related. I have a deep defiance, which used to be a negative defiance, but now it's a defiance for life. I reached a very dark place 12 years ago. And at that point, I assumed I'd lost everything. Like I thought I'd lost everything. I would have been surprised if I hadn't lost everything. And yet, even in that darkest moment, I remember thinking, "This isn't going to beat me." So that really, it's not a negative defiance. It's a defiance for life. Like this isn't going to beat me. And so I think that really hits it hard for me, what Andy said there. What about you, Joe?
What about me? Not for me. But yes, one of the things I've learned, we've all had our upsets, we've all had our downs, we've all had some issue in it. And for me, what I've learned is that you're asleep. And from asleep, you awaken within. And when you awaken within, then it's from there, it's a skip and a jump to enlightenment. And and Andy, you'll get this as well being an actor. And what I've learned and discovered now, only in the last couple of months, I've been on a journey for many, many years, that I now see the world as it is, as an act, a performance. Everyone in it pushing paper and everyone doing their little bit, from governments to political systems to the police, all on stage with their script. And I'm no longer participating in it, I'm actually observing it. And by observing it, I then see the power that we have as individuals. And by doing that and stripping away all those layers, we can do great things in this life, because none of that public arena has any power on us anymore. And that's my journey. And when you sort of hit that, it's kind of, God, life is, no matter what's going on with COVID or lockdown or all this garbage that's going on, it's irrelevant. It's all irrelevant, because it matters what's inside and the power and how you contribute to yourself that can make a difference on it. So
we had that walk, Joe, without going into too much detail, and not to put too fine a point on it. We all know one day we're not going to be here. Like, we're all going to die one day. We're human beings. Like, you're deluded if you think you're not. And so, why not make the most of every millisecond of a second, even if it's a second? Make the most of that, and that takes a lot of pressure off you. Then, and you're human. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to do things wrong. But nobody says you can't afford to enjoy that millisecond. And I put it down to the day for me.
But here it is for you as well, which we all talk about purpose. Oh, we got a purpose. What's my purpose in life? What's my purpose in life? And that's the biggest question that everybody asks. What happens if you don't have a purpose? You're not meant to have a purpose. The only thing you're meant to do on this planet is be you and live without purpose.
That's your purpose.
Yeah.
In effect, just exist.
Yeah. What about the whole area of mindset and, you come through these tough times, but then for some people, it can be a challenge then to, you come through it and everything seems okay. And then I've seen it happen with some people, their ego takes over and they think they're impenetrable, right? And I think there's a balance to be had. Everybody knows, everybody has their own crisis, right? So we can talk about, the things we've been through up to a point, but at a certain point, people switch off. And so how do you both manage your ego, right? You've both been through what people would describe as crisis, right? So how do you manage a balance between the fact that you've had that, but now there's a limit to how much people are interested in it going forward, and they're just talking to you? How do you balance your ego around this? Maybe Ewan first.
I think that is a very important point, Simon. It's something that I was discussing with a mentor of mine, and the question was, well, how much do you want this experience of cancer to define you? Because I was keen to give back, and I was fortunate. I was able to participate in the Irish Cancer Society campaign, Daffodil Day. So I was on their social media campaign, etc. And I took a lot of benefit from that in terms of trying to give back, trying to get the message out there. But then you have to check yourself. At what point does that become more egotistical than it does that you're actually giving back, contributing? And so I think I did take the active decision about Q1 that yes, I would try and engage with patients going through the same journey I went through, but I would probably dial it down in terms of with my social groups, my support network, how much I actually talk about cancer, etc. Because I don't want it to define me. I've come out stronger, I think, because of the experience. Experiences make you more resilient. But I don't want it at the same time to define who I am and be my story, if you like. It's just a small element of my story, which I've been very fortunate and privileged with the help of medical support to come through and come out the other end. So whilst I'm obviously very comfortable talking about it, like in these forums, and I think the more we talk about these things, the more you have the opportunity and chance that you might be able to positively influence someone else's mindset if they're going through something similar. At the same point, I think it's an excellent point. You don't want it to define your story going forward.
I might just flip that a little bit for Andy, because I mean, I know you, right? I know you went through a very, very tough time, and yet you're kind of amazing because you rarely, if ever, talk about it. You don't whinge about it. You don't reflect on it. How have you done that? What is it in you that has allowed you just to move on? I mean, because you have.
Well, I think first of all, I have rheumatoid arthritis. I'll die with rheumatoid arthritis. Every day I'm in pain. That's never going to go away. So it isn't. I am recovering, yes, but I still have to manage it and live with it every day. And unfortunately, rheumatoid arthritis isn't, and I mean this in the nicest possible way. It's with all diseases, money comes in, and it's very easy to get charities to focus on certain diseases because it's for the in thing. People don't focus on rheumatoid arthritis. People don't really even know what rheumatoid arthritis is. If I turn around to someone and say, I've got rheumatoid, they're, oh, you're young for that. They don't know that it's a blood disease and that what my immune system does is attack my body. And then, I mean, you can see now my hands are all over the place. So it's a different thing. So there is no ego. I have to deal with it every day. But I did give back. But what I decided to do to give back, because I agree with what you said there, I don't want it to be me. I'm so much more than that. So what I decided to do, so as you would know, Simon, I lost 15 stone. So when I was diagnosed, I was 30 stone. And they wouldn't give me the operation that I needed to do. So I had to lose 15 stone. And I did. I lost it in 2.5 years. And then I got the operation. So what I then did was talk to people about weight loss within the NHS. And also what I did when I lost weight, because at the time I was doing acting, I used to do work with underprivileged kids in the East End in drama to maybe give them a route out of the East End. So what I decided to do was give back, but not give back in relation to the disease. I just gave back in other ways that I felt I could help. Because I never wanted it to be about the disease, because, you know, and maybe that's the wrong thing actually, because I think I've just started the whole spiel by saying that no one knows a lot about it. And then unfortunately you have people like me that don't help that. But that was my decision anyway.
Cool.
Is it a case of, you know, how do we give back? And you talk about ego as well, Simon, that is it better to give back and not be shouting about it in a subtle and silent way, because the ego wants to say, you know, there's people that, oh, how wonderful and great and how brilliant I am. But if you do it like under the radar, I think it's a lot more tougher for the person as an individual. And you probably may feel that you give a little bit more back than normal. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Ewan?
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I'm like an open book. I share my experiences probably too much with everyone, and you know, I gained a lot. I brought everyone on the journey with me. I got such positivity from that. Everyone knew what I was going through. but everyone knew that I was responding generally pretty positively to it. So personally, I think that's a healthy dynamic, but that's what I'm used to. I know others that went through it, and they probably went through it in a much more almost dignified way, that they just got on with it and had a very, very small support network around them, immediate family. And a lot of people actually didn't know that they were going through that journey at all, in terms of friends. Obviously, their colleagues did, because they were absent from work for periods of time. But they did take it very graceful. They were very graceful about it. But they were strong enough that they had the support network, and I think I think in both examples it was a positive way to go through it, because you have the support network. What I think is dangerous if you don't talk about it, and you don't talk about it to anyone, and if you're in sort of isolated circumstances, then I don't think that would be a benefit. And personally, as I say, if by talking about it, if I can positively influence someone else's journey, then I think it's a good thing to do.
I think it's really, we get caught up in our own personalities. It doesn't matter. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't. That's it. Andy, your thoughts?
I think first and foremost, what you said there, Joe, is correct. Everyone has got a different way of dealing with it, and there is no right and wrong. It's that simple. For me, I got to a point where it was hurting me to see people's reaction to me in that place. It just got too much. So I didn't want to put the people I love through that pain anymore. So that's why I probably backed away, and because it was too much. I mean, I can know that you wouldn't know some of my friends, but my friends are very East End, builders, them kind of thing. And I always remember the one time when my closest friends saw me for the first time. They were in tears. I mean, floods of tears. And I didn't want to put them through that. So I made the choice to keep it to myself.
That's a great point.
But what I would say, Ewan, is I did have support. So I think you're right there. I think that's the one thing that I would completely agree with you on. You still need an outlet. If you make that kind of decision, you still have to be able to have an outlet, because if you don't have an outlet, that's a very, very lonely road, and it's a very tough road. And it's a road that I don't think a lot of people come back from. But if you have that outlet, how you choose to manage it has to be down to the individual. It just hurt me too much to see the hurt on other people's face.
No, it's interesting. You've both mentioned other people. You've just mentioned them, and Ewan was talking about a support network. And I think it is about other people. I think it would be imagine if we went through these things living on Mars by ourselves, right? I think we need other people to bring us out. And I'll never forget, some guy said to me 12, 13 years ago when I was in a very black place, and he was an Australian guy in his late 70s, and he said to me, and I'll never forget the words, and they were really simple, and it's the words from other people you remember. And he said, imagine what your life will be like if you carry on doing what you're doing, but imagine what it could be like if you stop. I'll never forget those. A very simple sentence. I would never have come up with those words. So we all help each other. Joe?
Yes, we do. And, the thing that's popping up for me is, how do we define what we have done or what our communities have done within the last 24 months? And that's a reflection on everybody, because we are individual and we do love communities and help. But has it been as wonderful, that community has been as wonderful as we say it has been? Or have we left others behind? Unknowingly.
I think, Joe, the answer to that will probably be in 5 years' time, and how much we've actually learned from the experience, and how much we've taken away from it, how much it's changed us, is the big question.
Well, if it's like our politicians, we'll have learned nothing, because decades and decades they keep repeating the same thing.
Let's not talk about politicians.
Simon, I was just thinking earlier on in the conversation when we started this, and we were talking about Zoom and, all looking at each other or looking at ourselves. And we have seen some stupid, I have to say, it's not stupid, silly projects come up, or inventions come up over the last year. So here's a really good one, I think. When we are now out in public, we should make a thing that you have mirrors that sits on your shoulders. So when you're talking to people, you can see yourself and you feel like you're at home in Zoom. Be brilliant. Everyone walking around with a classic.
It's a very interesting conversation, I think, now, because this pandemic has forced us to look at work differently. I mean, some companies were doing it anyway, but in the main, it's forced us all to look at work differently. I saw a report on the 4-day working week on the RTE News the other day. You wouldn't have seen that kind of thing on mainstream news 2 years ago. We're now looking at work-life balance in a way that we never did before. And it will be really interesting to see, as you said, for the next 5 years, to see if we actually do change anything, or whether in a year's time we're all just back in the office and we're all just doing the same things that we've done. It will be really interesting to see that.
It's the 4-day work week, and then someone goes, I'm going to write a better book. What's that going to be? It's going to be the 3-day work week. The 1 day. Gentlemen, myself and Simon, we have more guests coming on now just after the break. So I want to thank both of you coming on. If people want to reach out to you, where can they, if they can catch you on LinkedIn, if you give us your LinkedIn details, guys, lads. Andy, give us, where can people find yourself?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, so they can easily find me on LinkedIn if they need to.
Okay.
Yeah, likewise. I'm very active in LinkedIn. If you manage to spell my first name, it's Ewan, EWAN.
Ewan
Dunbar.
Dunbar on it. Simon, and also if people want to reach out to us, they can catch us at Business Eye Advisory, where we are sharing our knowledge and wisdom that we've learned over multiple years. We're like two old grumpy men, happy grumpy men, sharing information with people as well. So that's about getting in the conversation.
Absolutely.
Anyway, folks,
it's been a great chat, and I'd just like to end with this. I think it's Paulo Coelho. I think I pronounced his name right, and he has a quote: "Everything will be okay in the end, and if it isn't okay, it's not the end." And I think that's a good part of this chat here. Just keep going, keep going, keep going.
Perfect. Folks, we're going to come right back with our second guests coming on, our showcase business. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Sponsored by the Dunleary Rattown Local Enterprise Office. You're listening to Business Eye on Dublin South FM.
Yes, folks, and welcome back to the second half of Business Eye. Simon, interesting conversation we had in the very beginning there. Interesting conversation.
It was great. It was a real inspirational chat. Two men who have been through a pretty horrendous time, but have demonstrated that hope over adversity and courage over fear. Freedom is the other side of fear. And they demonstrated it really well. So it was a lovely chat.
True. And now we have two lovely ladies. So it's always nice to end the show on a showcase that we have. And today we have Sandra Steins and Camille. These are from Stella Corporate Housing. It was a business that just started in 2020. What a time to start a business. What is Stella Corporate Housing?
So basically, Stella is a corporate housing rental agency. So we specialize in long-term and short-term rentals, which are available for corporate companies to rent for their employees, either relocating for work purposes or traveling for business.
And why did you suddenly decide to create this business last year?
Well, pandemic happened. And it hit all of us, and people try different things. And I went swimming in the sea, in the Irish Sea, for the first time. And that's really what happened. I came out of the sea, and I called Camille, and I just said, "Let's do this." We just saw some pain point that our clients were having at the time, and we just did a business case, and we put all our ideas together, and we just decided to go forward and actually give this a go.
What were the pain points that your clients were having? Because I know that, short-term letting in Dublin, especially around the financial services sector, it's big money. And even some companies are using Airbnb. What is the marketplace like then? Is there a big interest for people to jump on and have you do all the work for them?
Yeah, definitely. With the pandemic, basically the demand pre-COVID was really high. And if we are looking specifically to the Dublin market, it always has been a very challenging market because of the low supply, but then the increasingly high demand for short-term accommodation. And so that's the first thing. And then during COVID, the supply, obviously a lot of providers had to give back a lot of the inventory into the market. And so it's kind of, but the demand was still there. And obviously because the service apartment sector offers spacious apartments with self-contained accommodation, that gives a bit of more safety for people traveling.
Is this your first business venture, each of you or both of you? Okay, and so the next question then is, if you were going to describe the journey you've been on since you started the business today to somebody who's thinking about setting up a business, what words of advice would you give them about what you've done or seen or what you could have done differently? What words, two or three bits of advice would you give somebody who's going to start up a business?
So it's been a very rewarding journey, and we've grown so much from where we were to where we are at the moment. So what we would say is that there's no right or wrong. You have to. It's a bit of a trial and error. So as long as you keep believing in yourself and your ideas, and you have to use the resources and network you have around you to help you grow and succeed. And also in the process, don't forget to have fun. And this is what
and also to kind of have patience. A lot of patience, because you build this idea and you think you're going to be here, and then you're not. And that's okay. It's just to, keep going.
You both have huge humors about you. For anybody who can't see you, they don't stop smiling, which I think is a huge ingredient in business. Humor and not taking yourself too seriously. Would you say that? You just got to go for it, but don't punish yourself when the day goes badly,
Exactly. You have a bad day and you pick it up, and we had a lot of those days, and we called each other and we're like, and then we just pick it up, and the next day is a new day, and that's how we're doing it, and it is working because we can see the results already.
Who's joining forces with yourselves? Who has poked up their interest in the business and is taking on the company to help them with their housing?
Yeah. All right. So we have an all-female lead senior team within our company. So we have 4 female executives, and then we have a team that looks after the operation side of it, and we also have a business coach that helps us on a regular basis to kind of move the business forward as well.
It's very important to have a business coach when you that's one of the piece of advice we definitely suggest to anybody that is thinking about getting their own business, is to have a business coach to bounce each other's ideas.
Wow. And Joe and I are business coaches, so this is music to our ears.
Music to our ears. Simon,
well, it does help.
Simon, we have people who recruitment agencies. So we have recruitment agencies. So this is sort of like the other agency. And when I worked abroad, and we were working within the US military, there was agencies that would go in and ship a military officer from one location in the world to another. And basically he would go out, hand the details to someone, they would find a location, move the furniture, settle them in, put their kids into school, do everything. So when they came over, it was just handed a folder with everything set up. Is that what's happening with yourselves, ladies, with large multinational corporations?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So it's very much like a hand-to-hand support with the clients that we're working with. So we take on all the corporate housing side of it. So or contact or delegate contact will come to us and initiate a request for sourcing for service apartment, whichever the location is required, and then we'll take over. And depending on the agreement, we will either be dealing with that person or we'll be dealing with the person traveling directly.
We also have agents in each of the key locations that we provide in service.
So, if we're talking about Spain, we have people in Spain on the ground, and obviously with the local knowledge and with the language and everything, which makes it very easy for us then to get the best apartments for our clients.
And what are your plans for the next 12, 18 months? Do you have solid plans, or do they depend on various different things you're not aware of yet? Describe your planning process.
So our objectives for the next 2 years is to maintain our strong relationship as well as building new ones. Part of our international plans are to expand to the US, Latin America, and APAC. We have currently have to enter the US market as we speak, and then to keep building the strong relationships that we have already in Europe. Just keep growing that.
Simon, it's a strange business to start when everything is locked down and there's no movement.
Isn't it? No one is traveling. I tell you, swimming. Have you got seriously swimming in the sea can do that?
It was probably a good time to start because there wouldn't be as much pressure, but you could learn and research and get do the contacts, and then when everything opened up again as well. Is there a lot of organizations fearful that they might go into a country and then get locked down for 12 months and won't be able to get out of there? That's one of the things you kind of go, oh my God, am I going to be stranded here? But
that's why I haven't been able to travel, because I was thinking to travel maybe to France, to my country of origin, and then I was like, if I get stuck in there for 12 months, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I could think of worse places to be stuck.
True, actually. Yes, Spain, France, not so bad, I suppose.
And tell us, ladies, if someone wants to reach out to yourselves, if they want to connect with the business and look more about how you can assist them, where can they locate us?
So they can find us on LinkedIn. Well, pretty much all the social media platforms like LinkedIn, Instagram, and we have a website as well, which is www.stellarcorporatehousing.com, and there is all contact details in there as well.
And LinkedIn as well. If you put a Stellar Corporate Housing, you can find us.
Say that I feel completely refreshed. You have amazing energy. Like I just.
Do you want to book somewhere? Just let us know.
Cool. That is cool.
We're going to have to call it there, folks. For everyone, please enjoy. I hope you enjoyed the show. We've had some great speakers on today. We've been influenced. I think myself and Simon are buzzing now. I'm buzzing. So, as myself and Simon would always say, have a super weekend. And Simon?
Well, I think I just want to repeat businesseyeadvisory.com, because that's where you and I can give the wise words of wisdom.
The wise words of wisdom. Until next week, folks, take care and God bless.